is an important example. Also in the case of power, I am not referring only to this one. Even in the context of power, you are going to have the same problem, because a lot of the power that is being produced in Himachal Pradesh is being exported to, and Himachal expects to get some financial benefits. In the year 2005 or 6, so you see the planning, the argument is that the planning for physical resources like water and power and things like that has to be in sync with the planning for financial resources for the state. Now in 2005, Himachal said we are a deficit state and we must get we must export power and get produce idle power, export power and get money for it, because their budget, it was a deficit state. But meanwhile, they have made all these things have changed. Among other things, the last commission, the last finance commission has also said that special transfers will be made to states if they protect their natural resources and so on. So we have to plan for our financial and natural resources together. And to what extent now the planning of Himachal Pradesh has to look into the water supplies for Delhi or its own financial benefit therefrom is an open question. You see the point I am making? If you have the alternative strategy, and a part of that alternative strategy is going to be part of that alternative strategy is going to be away from these two. These are the two sectors I looked at in this presentation. I'd like to extend it a little bit and say that there is another negative externality of soil erosion. In Himachal, we also have a great deal of soil erosion, and it is found that the machinery of the power plants gets impacted when you have soil erosion from the upstream watersheds, and many plants were shut for long periods of time. Now, as a consequence, more money is spent on the power plants, and you are on maintenance of machinery. Now, the other way to look at this is that you have a watershed development program upstream. Watershed development programs upstream will have a positive externality for power plants downstream. This is a very important thing, which is another part of this study, which I would like to focus a little bit on. That if you have upstream watershed development programs in the, if you look at that map we had of Himachal Pradesh, upstream, I think you can understand, we all know that upstream watershed projects will prevent soil erosion, and the downstream machinery of power plants will not get that much impacted by siltation and soil, by siltation. Now, if that watershed program is done upstream, you also have agriculture and horticulture. So, horticulture is the fourth sector which needs a lot of support in Himachal Pradesh. So, with horticulture and agriculture, diversified agriculture, local people's income increases a great deal. So, you go to what we call inclusive growth. Tourism also increases local incomes, horticulture, watershed, all these increase local incomes. So, the alternative scenario we are looking at is focused on inclusive growth and sustainable development for Himachal Pradesh. And the other scenario with power industry treats Himachal as a part of the larger Indian context, which it is, of course, but at the same time it has environmentally negative impacts. So that's what we are trying to capture. So what is the alternative scenario which will give inclusive growth for Himachal Pradesh? But see, my definition of inclusive growth was growth that reaches the poor and the people in Himachal Pradesh. Definition of sustainable growth is high growth rates. So possibly on the criteria of high growth rates, you are not getting as much of an increase in growth rates in the alternative scenario that we are looking at. You are not getting that kind of an increase in growth rates in the alternative scenario. You are getting a little decrease. So maybe this percentage that I was looking at, go down further. That's the percentage of loss. The loss is 0.004%, 0.0045 to 0.0044 by the time you reach 2030. By the time you I'm on the wrong page here. Yeah. By the time you reach 2030, this becomes 0.004. Now here again, the assumption is that tourism, that is pointed out in the next one. Yeah. That as you have this decrease in the growth rate, it depends on our analysis also, you know. And our analysis says that tourism income is, we are not looking at the higher demand for tourism as incomes increase over time. So the loss percentage will decrease when you reach 2030. So on the criteria of just the growth in state domestic product, you have a marginal decrease in the growth of state domestic product. But you have an increase in the income. I'm not giving the full study. There is an increase in the income of the poorest people because of horticulture, agriculture, processing, tourism. And you have industrial pollution is also avoided. That's the next part of the study, that you don't have industrial pollution to that extent because some industries are not located in the ecologically fragile region. Just as some kinds of hydropower is not allowed in the ecologically fragile region, some industries are not located. The lesson really is that the lesson really following from that is that you will have sort of a different paradigm of growth for ecologically fragile regions. I'm not saying this is what you should do in all regions. I'm saying this is what you should do in ecologically fragile hill states. Hill states should not have the same industry, the same power, the same everything as in other states. They can have a diversified pattern of development. That's the basic notion. Yeah, more questions now. Now here, this is what some of the slides here say. Preserving national parks will make hydropower generation less stressful, increase biodiverse cover and increase tourism income. And preservation is potential environmental cost will be further low. Potential environmental cost will be further lower as demand for recreational services is income elastic and will rise with income. It improves equity. The overarching objective of actualizing the hydropower potential for export to rest of the country should take serious note of these environmental concerns.
Ma'am, I have one more question in this line. Out of any analysis of ma'am, this trade-offs when we do, it emerges that always going sustainably, it will help us in the long run. And initial costs may be a bit of like a burden. Why don't we go initially, like we are doing a kind of postmortem and finding that out? Why are we not able to go initially in a sustainable way for all the projects?
Say that again. Yeah. A little louder.
Yeah, ma'am. Like, ma'am, you have analyzed this for these two power projects. We knew initially that run-of-the-river projects are detrimental to ecology. So why we couldn't do that at that stage itself, all this analysis, and not go for those projects? Why we are doing it as post facto for most of the things? Why the sustainability concept emerges later on and not initially?
Now this is a why the question really, to repeat the question, why don't we, before we think of development, think of all these things? That's a political economy question. Political economy implying that you know, there are two views about growth and development. One view is we grow first and then we clean up later. That's the environment Kuznets curve view, that let's grow first and then we'll clean up later. That is, we'll have all the problems, the relationship between between GDP and environmental degradation. First you have an increase in GDP and then it falls after a certain point. Now unfortunately, this view is not always correct from the ecology viewpoint, because sometimes there may be certain limits that you cross and these changes become irreversible. Like national parks and biodiverse areas, if you destroy the biodiversity, for it to come back will take 50 years or 100 years or may not come back at all. So you cannot grow first. And but your question was slightly different. You said, why don't we think of everything initially? Now the reason we can't think of everything initially is perhaps we don't know. Knowledge about these things is also growing at the same time. That's, I'm being very charitable to the political scenario. Knowledge is also not known. That is, ecology is not very much a part of the decision-making process in India. Second is, there is a preponderance of markets, and the markets pushing increases in GDP, and a political interest in doing things that are related to, you see, construction, big projects have a kind of, they are liked by most political decision makers, and preservation doesn't seem to fall in that category. Even at the global level, forget the Indian, I mean at the global level we argue for development as well, but which kind of development? What do we mean by this so-called green growth? Is it possible or is it not possible? Some of these things are not known, and some of these things are known but not followed because of the decision-making processes in the country. That's all I can say at the moment. Other questions?
Once we are starting the project, we have to, I mean, we analyze that this project is to be done up to this time. So because of the time constraint also, we are not able to take the action what she is looking for. That we do the whole study and then we start the project.
Well, it's easy to say that studies take time, but there are cost and time overruns in projects even with otherwise. Irrigation projects in India have been have taken much more time without any waiting for any studies because of many other reasons as well. Anyway, that's okay. Yeah.
Ma'am, aren't we also considering the increase in agricultural land over a period of time? Because if there's an increase in agricultural land, there's a high possibility that national parks or forest land is encroached, and there's a decrease in that area too. So, but then increase in agricultural land may yield to higher GDP.
Agricultural land increase.
Yes, yes.
No, you see, on land use, we have increasing agricultural land, whether in Himachal Pradesh or in India as a whole. The net sown area has not increased at all over a number of years. In the last 40, after in the 1960s, after the 1960s, after 70 or so, the net sown area has remained constant in India as a whole, 141 million hectares or so of the total land mass in India. Now, it's true that in the initial stages, agriculture depended on an increase in agricultural land cultivated. Now, the agricultural production depends more on increases in productivity, per hectare increase in production. That's what it depends on more, right? So, it's not really, we are not increasing that. So, forests are not getting eroded into because of agricultural expansion. Not at all, not in India. And in any case, as I said in one slide, agricultural land in Himachal is a very small part of the total land. And it is, the rest of it is 37% or so is forests in Himachal. Of course, the quality of those forests is going down. 37% is forests, only 10 or so is agricultural land.
Ma'am, I have a question, please.
Yeah, please.
You had discussed the alternative scenario for an ecologically fragile region, that is Himachal Pradesh. So, with your experience, can you give some idea about alternative solutions to the places like plains where we don't have natural resources, we don't have industries. So, some idea if you can give about this sustainability and alternate model of development to have over there.
About industry?
Not industry, as a whole, because in plains we have a lot of pressure on the natural resources. Forests are already not there. And the agriculture and other occupations, they are giving a heavy load on the ecosystem, and plus their level of rich level of they're not very rich people. So can we have alternate model of development, especially giving the scenario that already they are not developmentally very high into that region. We don't have industry, don't have any other.
You see, there will be differences in the development scenarios in different states. There will certainly be. But we were taking this study as a study for an ecologically fragile region. So I will not say that everywhere you should follow this policy.
Ma'am, my question is just very specific. With your experience, I think studies might have been carried out so that in plains how we can have alternate model of development which may not have the benefit of very rich resource base like Himachal Pradesh is having. Himachal Pradesh is a very rich resource base. It has hurdle power and all the natural forests are there. But in plains already there no resource are there. And but still
now they will I don't think which state do you have in mind?
I'm talking about eastern UP.
Eastern
UP.
UP. Huh. Now